I remember the morning like a gut punch. A 20-ton excavator was tearing up my backyard without one call, one notice, or a shred of permission, and my grandfather's vegetable garden was disappearing scoop by brutal scoop. Black diesel fumes choked the air, everything tasting like spent rubber in memory, and there she was, Brenda Kensington strutting in a hard hat like she owned the deed to my family. She was pointing deeper already, eyeing my grandfather's hand-planted oak for the next hit, and I remember thinking, no way, not this, not his tomatoes, not that oak he'd set out when he swore he'd teach me how to be stubborn and kind at the same time. My name's Grant. 3 years ago, I inherited this place in Willowbrook Estates, 2 acres outside Denver Flagstones. My grandfather laid with his own hands. Tomatoes that tasted like summer, and a porch where you could hear the county quiet down at dusk. I thought I was inheriting peace, not a slow-burning war. But Brenda moved in fresh from some corporate hell and slid into the HOA presidency within 6 months, like it was a promotion she'd prepared for her whole life. Then she declared open season on anything that smelled like character, history, or family. She runs like a predator, stands too close when she talks. Voice pitched just loud enough to dominate, treating neighbors like pieces on a chessboard. Her first declaration of war came on a Tuesday in October when I was deadheading the last roses my grandfather planted the year my grandmother died. They were memorial roses, a plaque tucked between them, a handful of summers and names that made the soil sacred. Brenda appeared at my fence clutching a violation notice like a ceremonial sword. "Grant, those roses are creating a sightline obstruction," she said, all practiced sympathy. They barely reached my waist. A toddler could see over them. The violation demanded removal within 14 days, or fines would begin. That paper felt toxic in my hands. It demanded I destroy the last living connection to my grandparents' 60-year love story because Brenda decided visibility mattered more than memory. That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with bureaucracy. I was dealing with someone who took pleasure in breaking what others treasured. Over the next months, the citations came like clockwork. The vegetable garden, too visible from the street, the oak, a potential hazard. My mailbox, painted 3 inches beyond approved setback parameters. Ridiculous things aimed at exhausting us. You learn quickly how the system can be gamed. In Colorado, HOA violations must be based on written covenants. If the rule isn't in writing, the citation is meaningless, but most folks don't know that. And Brenda counted on ignorance. She counted on fear. She counted on people giving up because paperwork is exhausting. She also counted on targeting the Washingtons, the Garcias, old Mr. Kowalski, and us. The pattern became a language I learned to read. I didn't fold. I turned my dining room into a war room. Files, photos, dates, drone images, every violation stacked like bricks. I documented everything, every bogus notice, every late-night visit, every fabricated drone photo used to pretend we were running a commercial landscaping business. I started learning legal rules the hard way, demand the specific covenant, demand written proof. As I documented, my anger sharpened into strategy. For a year, it was paper terrorism until she escalated from paper to property. One Tuesday in March, my neighbor Janet called at 7 a.m. "Grant, you need to get outside right now." I threw on clothes and ran into a scene that looked like battlefield prep. A massive John Deere was methodically ripping through my back fence and the flagstones my grandfather set. Diesel smelled like a funeral. Brenda stood behind the machine with a clipboard directing the operator like a foreman at the Panama Canal. "What the hell are you doing on my property?" I shouted over the engine. "Oh, Grant, this is an emergency drainage project. Didn't you get the notice?" she said with that practiced surprise. Of course, there was no notice. She cited Section 12.3b of the Covenant's emergency powers and spoke like scripture, as if a clipboard could rewrite deeds. The operator looked miserable, the kind of man who'd seen enough fights to know when to leave. I started recording. I understood how permits worked. Legitimate emergency work requires immediate notification to affected owners. The city doesn't hand over someone's yard to a clipboard and a hard hat. Within hours, the city planning department perked up. My lawyer friend Derek called with a line that made my knees weak. She filed the permit listing herself as property owner for your lot. She'd filed paperwork claiming ownership of my land. That's not petty. That's criminal fraud. The next morning, Inspector Patricia Reeves showed up, clipboard and authority, and read Brenda's permit as if she were reading a grocery list gone wrong. "This permit contains material misstatements. You don't own this property," she said. The operator loaded his machine and left before Brenda could blink. Victory tasted like diesel and cold coffee. But Brenda did not retreat, she doubled down. A week later, a certified letter arrived, another violation notice. This one accusing me of destroying HOA infrastructure, stapled to a photocopied plat map from 1962, showing a perpetual drainage easement running through my backyard. The map looked impeccable. Faded paper county stamps, surveyor scrawl. It matched Brenda's pond like a surgical incision. I called Derek then, a surveyor named Tom who arrived with gadgets that beeped like medical monitors. He mapped every inch and discovered something Brenda hadn't expected anyone to find. A county clerk's notation the easement had been abandoned in 1987. Abandoned easements die. The land reverts to the owner. She had no authority. But it got worse. Public HOA financial records showed 18 months of payments to a downtown law firm, invoices for historical document reproduction, and my stomach dropped reading the line, "aging services." They had paid for fake vintage documents. Brenda had built a legal lab to manufacture ancient-looking paperwork to justify taking people's land. She'd used association funds to create weapons. I felt betrayal the way you feel cold when you open a door in winter, shocked, furious, and oddly clear. I could have quietly taken it to the city. Instead, I chose exposure. I called a neighborhood potluck and laid everything out on 3 folding tables. The fake permits, the invoices, the bank records, the photos of bogus notices. 23 families packed into the community center that Tuesday. One by one, they stood and told the same story of impossible violations and targeted harassment. Mr. Kowalski produced a shoebox of citations. Miguel told of fines for a dog they never owned. Janet displayed Christmas light violations dated months after the lights came down. The room went from murmurs to a roar. Brenda filed a police report claiming I threatened her because what villainy doesn't include a gaslighted counterattack. But truth has a way of congealing into evidence. I had city inspectors' sworn statements, witnesses, and a plan. Ray, an excavator operator with a John Deere and a gruff sense of justice, agreed to restore my yard in public, fully permitted. Inspector Reeves and Deputy Martinez agreed to attend. A local reporter agreed to come. We staged a legal restoration, heavy machinery official permits, and a public meeting where Derek would walk through the 3-year trail of documentation. On the morning of the restoration, Brenda arrived with a suit and a lawyer and promptly accused Ray's crew of unauthorized activity. Inspector Reeves checked permits. Deputy Martinez took notes, and the crowd that had once been afraid turned into an audience. Inside the community center, Derek laid out the legal framework with the calm of someone reading a verdict. The mandatory HOA with enforcement powers didn't exist until 1985. Properties purchased before then were grandfathered out. Brenda bought her house in March 1984. She had no legal standing to be president. Every citation she issued was by law meaningless. In front of 47 neighbors, 2 law officers, a city inspector, and a reporter, Brenda's castle of paperwork started to crumble. She asserted emergency authority, and Derek asked plainly, "Under what legal standing?" She stuttered, confused. And then the mistake that ended her. She admitted to ordering excavations and filing permits while claiming presidential authority. That confession, witnessed and recorded, became the rope that pulled her down. We voted unanimously to file criminal charges. Inspector Reeves confirmed fraudulent permit filings carry felony penalties. Deputy Martinez took statements. The photographer's camera snapped like a judge's gavel. Ray finished restoration before the meeting ended. My yard was better than before flagstones, reset soil, graded irrigation installed with the money we would eventually get. Brenda pled guilty months later, paid restitution, did community service, and moved away. Willowbrook healed the HOA, reformed transparent elections, replaced secret power plays, and the community garden we planted with starter plants from my grandfather's restored plot became a place where kids learned to plant instead of measuring grass. If there's a moral here, it's a practical one, not a sermon document, everything. Paper defeats deception. Power without oversight corrodes into abuse. And sometimes justice isn't quiet. It's neighbors showing up, lawyers doing their jobs, city officials enforcing rules, and a community refusing to be bullied. Authority is only as legitimate as the checks that bind it. So here's my parting question for you, and I mean this. Do you know when your HOA was established? Do you know who really has the power to make decisions about your property? Drop your city and state. And the worst, HOA horror you've seen, share your story. And if this makes you want to check your own title, hit like and tell me, when does enforcement become tyranny?